Well, hello there, friends. Thanks for clicking on this video and spending a little bit of time watching this. I certainly appreciate it. And I've gone through in the last two videos my comments. Thank you so much for your comments and your insights. I greatly appreciate it. But also sharing your knowledge with the rest of this community. But I do want to talk about something, and I was going to put this in a video sometime during the summer, but at this point I think it's appropriate. It's actually two things that I want to talk about, and I'll try not to be too long-winded about it. The first thing I want to talk about is I want to make a response to a comment by Lionforge 3077, and the comment was after I had melted this lead down and burned some of the tin out of it and made it a little softer lead. And I'm not doing this to insult anybody, because it's actually a good question. And there again, this comment to Lionforge 3077 said, just for shits and giggles. And I get that. I get that, and I'm sure that most lead casters, bullet casters out there understand. But what if someone had clicked on that and just didn't quite understand what we were trying to accomplish through that video? Okay? And this is the reason why I kind of want to do this, because we have to admit that in this anti-gun world that we live in today also comes with an anti-lead knowledge, because there are some states trying to ban the use of lead, and we all know that if we shoot shotguns with the migratory game birds, duck hunting, goose hunting in particular, a lot of states, if not all, have banned the use of lead shot. They all want you to use steel shot. So there's a lot of knowledge out there that's, in my opinion, been thrown by the wayside. So what I want to do is I'm going to scratch the bottom of that chunk of lead that I presumably burned a lot of the tin out of. But before I get to that, you will know that I use these Mars Lumograph pencils. And somebody had asked where you can get these. You can get them at an art store, but you have to be careful, and I will explain to you the first mistake that I made. When I wanted to locate a set of these, I went to Hobby Lobby and I went into the art section, and they had a similar design container, Lumograph pencils, same number, 12 and everything else. And I grabbed them off the shelf and I started walking around looking at other things, and then I got into the drawing section of Hobby Lobby. Now when I say draw, I'm talking about the people that sit down and pencil out buildings. There's another name for it and it escapes me right now. And I happen to see this particular box, not this box, but a box with the Stettler pencils on it, and it was 30 bucks. So I felt pretty proud that I found a similar product for about 18 until I got home. I tried those pencils and none of them worked on the lead, as was demonstrated in the YouTube video. So fortunately my daughter is an artist, and she could definitely use the pencils. So I really wasn't out anything, because I got a hug and a kiss from my daughter by giving her the pencil set. So I went to Amazon and I found this particular Stettler Mars Lumograph pencils, and I think I actually paid about 15 bucks for these. So they were about half of what like Hobby Lobby was asking for them. So be careful. Make sure that when you do buy them, don't make the mistake I did. Buy the Stettler, because these are the ones that have, and I keep saying hardened lead, but I think we all have to realize it's actually graphite. It is hardened graphite that make these pencils what they are and useful for at least what I do. Okay, so getting to the question from Lion Forge 3077, just for shits and giggles, is the hardness on the bottom of the lead same as what would be on the top? Now if you read what I wrote on the top of this, I wrote 5B used to be 4B range lead. Now this is the piece that I tested. Now, since we know what's written on the front is 5B, here's the bottom of it. And I'm going to try to do my little scratch. I don't know if you guys can see it, but the 5B pencil is gouging it. Okay, and there's the 5B pencils. Hopefully the camera can focus in on it. And I have to state, it's windy outside, so I got the door closed. But anyhow, hopefully you can see that scratch on the bottom. Okay. And here's the 6B pencil, and it just glides across the top. Okay. Now I do have a chunk of lead in my supply of lead that I've written on the top 6B to 5B, because the 6B pencil does scratch that, so does the 5B pencil, but the 6B does not scratch as deep. Okay, so I could probably do with that chunk of lead that I did with this, just put it on the fire and let it burn, and you know, burn that tin out of that lead. So, for the benefit of those that probably don't know, and correct me if I'm wrong, friends, because this I do not know. I'm not aware of anything that'll sink into molten lead. I don't know of anything. But that was a good question just for shits and giggles, because somebody may not know that nothing will sink into the molten lead. So as this is cooling, there's no impurities, you know, separating from the top and or the bottom. Thus, when it comes to these lead pots, for those that don't know, when you have your molten lead in the lead pot, there's a little lever that opens up a gate in the bottom of the lead pot. So those of us that are using lead pots to cast, the lead's coming out of the bottom. So if the impurities were settling on the bottom, you know, as just for shits and giggles, you would have to understand that that does not happen. Otherwise, as you're pouring your lead out of the bottom of the lead pot, you would be just naturally putting the contaminants that would settle in the bottom of the lead into your bullet mold, if that's what's happening. And obviously, those of us that have been casting for a long time, we know that that's not what happens. So for shits and giggles, I just wanted to answer that just for the benefit of those that may not fully understand the entire process here. So thank you for that question. Now, the other day when I was shooting this and I miscounted and I go back to school, you will have seen that on one of the shots, it looked like I flinched. And I just want to kind of like talk. I got some stuff on my nose right here. I just kind of want to talk a little bit about flinching, because having been a flintlock shooter for a very, very, very long time, I notice it in myself and I notice it in others, more so in flintlock shooters than in those that shoot percussion. Now, for me, okay, when I shoot revolvers, I do not put a death grip on my revolvers. I'm left-handed, naturally left-handed, so if you notice how I hold my guns, when I'm not shooting ambidextrous, especially when I'm on a bench rest, I hold them with my left hand and cup and grip everything with my right hand. So what's actually squeezing the trigger is my left index finger, okay? But I do not put a death grip on my guns. So what you saw, perceivably as a flinch, was nothing more than the kinetic energy that's developed from a traveling hammer and coming to that sudden stop, and the gun did that. That's what that was. No, really, that's what that was, guys. That was the kinetic energy coming to a sudden stop. I hope you see the humor. I hope you see the humor. But for me, I typically do not put a death grip when I'm holding a gun. Now I know when it comes to shooting semi-automatic handguns, and we teach people hold it tight. Well, you've got a lot of movement with the slide, and then some of the guns that don't have fixed barrels, that barrel floats in conjunction with the slide going back. So there is a lot of movement in a semi-automatic handgun, and you would want to hold that gun a little bit tight, in my opinion, maybe a little bit tighter than, say, one would with a handgun, okay? So over the years, and I'll be honest with you guys, until, you know, I moved onto this property, I never saw the need or ever owned a semi-automatic handgun. It's always been black powder revolvers, okay? With the exception of years and decades ago, a Mitchell Arms 45 7.5-inch barrel that shot the you know, the long Colt. So for me, I tend not to put a death grip on the guns. So that's my excuse. But with that being stated, over the years shooting my flintlock rifle, I have noticed and I've heard that, you know, when you have, let me get this in here, when you have your lock drop onto the frizzen and come to that sudden stop, it appears that some people are flinching. And even myself, you'll hear me say, oh, I pulled that shot. In my mind, I'm perceiving flinching, or you know, not holding the rifle completely steady. And this is what I've told people that are new to flintlock shooting, because it is observably more, it's more observable with a flintlock than it is, say, like with a percussion rifle. Again, with a percussion rifle, you only have that one movement. The hammer striking the cone, the nipple, and the gun going off. And it's such a spontaneous action that you don't really see whether somebody is flinching or not, unless you do what I did. And, you know, it's observable, especially on camera. And the camera does make a person look 10 pounds fatter than what they actually are. So that little bit of flinch is highlighted. That's my excuse. But let me just kind of show here. Okay, this is my flintlock. Okay, full cock, it's empty, of course. Okay, so when that hammer drops, okay, try not to put the barrel through the window, the glass window here. When that hammer moves forward and it comes to abrupt stop, you also have your frizzen moving forward, and that comes to an abrupt stop. Now, if the gun doesn't go off, in some cases, I'm not saying all, but in some cases it appears you flinched. But in reality, is it the kinetic energy that's being transferred from the movement of the hammer, the cock, striking the frizzen, and the frizzen flying open and coming to an abrupt stop? That gun doesn't go off. Where does that kinetic energy go? Some people think it's observable in the flinch, But is it really the flinch, or is it the kinetic energy doing what it's supposed to do? You know, like a pendulum. We all know how a pendulum works. You've got 5 balls on a string. You've got one ball right in the middle, so you can take the 2 balls on the end, swing them out, they strike that center ball. That center ball doesn't move, but that energy travels to the other balls that were stationary, but due to kinetic energy, they move. And then, you know, they go back and forth. Well, the same principles can be stated and possibly held true when it comes to shooting these guns, and in particular, more readily observable in a flintlock, because you've got 2 items moving, the cock and the frizzen, and both come to an abrupt stop at different moments in time, because you have to recognize that as the cock is coming down, it stops here while your frizzen pan is getting close to the end of its travel, and then you get that sudden stop. So if the gun doesn't go off, thus, you know, the flash in the pan saying, where does that energy go? And it is in some people's mind, it's minute. It's not observable. But since I've been shooting these for several decades right now, and in particular, I watch new people shoot these guns. And when they claim they're flinching, I just kind of set them aside and I kind of explain this to help them realize that it may not be you flinching. Because I've heard so many guys say, wow, I never flinch like that when I'm shooting my 30-30, my 30-06, or anything else. Well, there again, those guns go off when you squeeze the trigger. At least, you know, 100 times out of 100 times. You know, very rarely do you have a dud. But with this, you can have that issue, and shooters don't stop and think about kinetic energy as it pertains to black powder guns. So, that's all I have to say about that. That's my excuse. That's how I'm going to sell the flinch the other day. Kinetic energy. But those are things that I want people to stop and think about. Because when you go from shooting a modern firearm to these, you have to educate with different terms and different terminologies. And I'll mention this real quick, because I make longbows, I've sold longbows, I make my own arrows. It's a whole different beast right there. But when I sell a longbow to somebody, I have to take the time and educate them with one certain thing. If you've shot recurve bows all your life, and you know that there's a breakover, okay? It pulls hard, but then when the cams or the wheels on your bow break over, you've got all this dead weight. Well, most guys that learn and or taught to shoot compounds, there we go, compound bows, they tell you to pull it back real quick until the breakover, and then you can finish the travel. When it comes to long bows or wooden bows, okay, in particular self bows, I'm not talking about bows that are backed with fiberglass, because again, that's a different beast, okay, because we're not talking, you know, a bow that's wood that has fiberglass on the back of it is not the same as a self bow, and or a bow that has backing with rawhide, okay? So the mechanics, and I have to take the time to explain this. If you are used to shooting a compound bow and you give that first snap to the breakover point, when it comes to a wooden longbow that's a self bow, you have to have a steady draw. Because if you take that longbow, that self bow, and give it that snap, you increase the chances by 100-fold of snapping the wood. Let me illustrate it like this. you're at a campsite and you want to get some kindling to start a fire, and you have a piece of wood that long. What's going to break that piece of kindling? A quick snap over your knee, or if you try to bend it slow? I think we'll all readily agree it's that quick snap that breaks that piece of kindling into a smaller piece. The same principle, the same kinetic energy applies to longbows. So anyhow, friends, thank you so much for watching this video. I look again to your look forward once again to your comments and things like that. I certainly appreciate it, and I'm glad that we can have these conversations. And also for the poster that talked about, you know, when the lead gets to that yellow bluish color, it's putting off more toxins. I completely understand that. That's why when I cast outside. On occasion when it's dead air and I need to cast, and I'll put a fan behind me to push all those toxins and everything else away from me. And I get it. Lead can be a heavy metal poisoning, but at the same time, I kind of wonder how much of that is not some sort of fear mechanism being indoctrinated, just simply because look at what the country did to get us away from mercury. Oh, it's highly toxic, and you know, if you break one of those mercury thermometers, you need to have a hazmat crew come in and clean up all of that. But yet these new light bulbs that they bullshitted everybody into buying, they've got mercury in them. So there again, I wonder how much is this some sort of fear control mechanism to get us away from a certain product. And you know, what better way to get us to quit casting lead bullets by telling everybody, oh, you don't want to breathe it in because you're going to have heavy metal poisoning, which I do not discount. But is it at the rate that they're trying to indoctrinate with fear? So, anyhow, I'll leave it at that. Once again, thanks for watching, and I hope everybody will have a wonderful day. Keep your powder dry. Keep your aim straight. May your choices be sensible. Bye.